I've done several lists on this channel recently on dark, evil, and diabolical horror movies, but let's look at the other side with wholesome and uplifting horror movies. Some might say these qualities are in opposition with what a horror film should be, but I totally disagree. Horror can and often does have positive messages, heartfelt relationships between the characters, and hopeful endings. At the end of the video, I'll let you know where you can stream these movies, and I also have affiliate links for physical media in the description below. So my name is Daniel with the Cobwebs channel, and let's get started.
Mom,
Yeah?
are you scared?
Well, of course not. What's there to be afraid of?
This house?
Oh, don't be.
Dolls from 1986, which is in many ways a traditional old dark house movie about a group of stranded travelers who take refuge in a creepy old mansion where the host's collection of antique dolls turn out to be alive and violently judgmental of anyone lacking innocence. Dolls is directed by Stuart Gordon, and while his most popular movies, Reanimator and From Beyond, could never even come close to a list like this, Dolls has a really fun feeling of a kid's movie, while not actually being a kid's movie, as it's R-rated and very violent and gory. But the lead character is a kid, played by an actress who's very good, very natural in the role, and it gives us a childlike perspective through the movie. It has that traditional trope of an evil stepmother, but also a terrible father. Her parents are awful, and part of it is about a heartfelt connection that she makes with a man who stays there, who's very kind, very good with kids, and ends up protecting her through the movie. And ultimately, the movie is about how people who have an innocence and a continued appreciation for childhood wonder are spared, and the cynical, bitter, and cruel people have to be sacrificed. It's kind of like the dolls are a cleanse for wholesomeness. Now, they look great. We've got some really good effects going through here. A lot of creepy designs with the dolls. I really like the supporting cast, like these two punk rock girls, and Guy Rolfe as the actual host, who you classic horror fans will know from movies like Mr. Sardonicus. Dolls has great atmosphere, a childlike innocence, but really delivers as a traditional 80s horror movie.
If you're happy and you know, clap your hands.
Little Monsters from 2019. When a kindergarten class is interrupted by a sudden zombie outbreak, a cheerful teacher and a slacker musician must team up to keep the children safe and oblivious to the carnage. That's an aspect of this movie I really love, because it is about a field trip, some kids going to a farm. The teacher is played by Lupita Nyong'o, and she's like a beaming light in this movie. I don't think she's ever been more beautiful and charming, and she's just so fun to watch here. As well as this burnout guy who's one of the kids' uncle, who's really just there to hit on the teacher. But they end up being a great team against this zombie outbreak, and I love that aspect of them trying to shield the kids from the horrible things that are going on. This is very much an R-rated movie. It's got language, gore, even some sexual content, but throughout the movie, everyone's still trying to protect these kids so they don't see all this insane stuff going on. But it feels a lot like a horror rom-com. It's very fun and funny and really works as a romance film. I remember when I first watched this movie with my wife, she absolutely hated the main guy from the start, and it's understandable. He's like a major burnout loser jerk at the beginning. But I remember she said, this movie's gonna make me care about this guy by the end of the film, isn't it? And yes, it's actually a very good movie about redemption. I really cared about these characters by the end. And we even get a fun supporting performance from Josh Gad as a children's entertainer who turns out to, of course, be a horrible person. It's a lot of fun. The zombie stuff is good, but it's really just that wholesome energy around love, protecting kids, and redemption that makes me love this film.
Welcome, curious viewers,
We found this like weird, probably banned VCR game.
and become one with your new reality.
Beyond the Gates from 2016. This is about two estranged brothers who try to close down their father's old video store after he passes away, and they discover a VHS board game, and it ends up unlocking a portal to another world. Apparently, VHS board games were a thing back in the 80s, sadly before my time. I'm sure those would have been a lot of fun to play. But I love Beyond the Gates because it's very solidly a part of the 2010s era of indie horror. That was the time when I was checking out as many indie horror films as I could, and it has a lot lot of familiar faces in it, like Graham Skipper, Bria Grant, Chase Williamson, and yes, it is very low budget, and you can feel it in some ways. I don't think the movie's reach exceeds its grasp, and it just has a very fun, retro 80s nostalgia feeling to it, while not having worthless nostalgia, because the movie's very much about dealing with the past and family reconciliation, about siblings coming together after they've lost their parents, and learning how to be a family with only each other. One thing that I've definitely noticed as I've come more and more into adulthood, now that I'm in my early 30s, is you really have to be intentional about continuing to have a relationship with your siblings as you all become busy adults and you've moved various places. And I think the movie does a great job being about that, while also just being a really fun horror movie. You've got Barbara Crampton in here as the spooky host of the VHS tape. The Other World is very much inspired by Lucio Fulci movies like The Beyond, and I love the gore and the bright colors that brings it. It's a lot of fun, and it's always been one of my top comfort horror films.
Hi.
Casper from 1995. A friendly young ghost living in a haunted mansion befriends a lonely girl whose father is hired to investigate the house's ghostly happenings. So this is the one purely family movie on the list, and at first I didn't even want to include any kids movies here because I thought that would be too easy, but Casper's just gotta be here. It is one of the coziest movies I've ever seen in my life, and it's a film that I think goes beyond just being a kid's movie because I find that I appreciate it more and more as I get older. I'm incredibly nostalgic for family movies from the 90s. It's probably my favorite decade for them, which makes perfect sense because that was a decade when I was a little kid. But it was the time when family films got real budgets. This is a beautiful looking movie with incredible haunted house atmosphere that makes me feel right at home right away. It has a beautiful score, great actors like Bill Pullman and Christina Ricci, probably the queen of spooky 90s kids movies. But beyond all the fun, the laughs, the comforting atmosphere, I do think this film has kind of a beautiful message about accepting death, that it's not always to be feared and can sometimes be a hopeful transition. This could very easily be a movie just about bringing people back from the dead, and it is partially about that, but it is ultimately about acceptance. And I think it's a little bit deeper than kids movies pretty much always get. So I love Casper. I think it is a wonderful, hopeful movie with some really great family messages to it. And it's warm and endearing.
It's coming from downstairs.
Comes from everywhere.
The Uninvited from 1944. A brother and sister buy a seaside house only to find it haunted by a restless spirit tied to a tragic family mystery. So if you're like me and want a comforting movie watching experience, probably one of the first places you're going to go is an old classic black and white film. I love these movies. I love a 1940s rom-com. I think it's one of the most pleasant and relaxing kind of movies you can watch. And this film really captures that while still being a full-fledged haunted house movie. In fact, it's one of the first films to treat ghosts seriously and even sympathetically. The ghosts aren't even just to be feared. There are some family secrets that get unearthed, and there's some tragedy, and there's some real empathy to it that I think is really beautiful. It's got a genuinely wonderful romance at the center of it between actors Ray Milland and Gail Russell, who are fantastic in this film. There's absolutely beautiful music going throughout, but yes, it's a horror movie. It's spooky. There are apparitions. There's a seance sequence. There's a dark manor with candelabras being carried around. It's got that atmosphere perfectly that I absolutely love, while being a genuinely heartfelt and wonderful film. Train to Busan from 2016. As a zombie outbreak spreads across South Korea, passengers on a high-speed train must fight to survive, with a father desperately trying to protect his young daughter along the way. I might say at this point, the foreign country that's become the most popular for Americans to consume media from might be South Korea. South Korea movies and TV shows have exploded. I mean, shout out to my little sister Mary. She's obsessed with K-dramas. And Train to Busan is another example of why this is the case, because this is a phenomenal movie that absolutely knocked my socks off when it first came out. Gosh, almost 10 years ago. That's crazy. It's an incredibly satisfying zombie movie with fast running zombies zombies, and it is unbelievably intense, and yes, it is gory, as characters are desperately trying to survive on this train and mostly failing at it. There is so much death here. But the themes of it are really beautiful. The main theme is definitely fatherhood. The main character is a workaholic father who has to realize what's truly important in the middle of a horrible situation, and he has a wonderful redemptive character arc going through this as a father just desperately trying to save his kid, and it's honestly really beautiful to see. When I first watched this, I wrote a Letterboxd review that just says one of the most emotionally powerful horror films I have ever seen, and I really believe that. I care about the characters so much while I'm watching this. I'm so invested. And the ending is devastating, but also life-affirming, uplifting, and one of the most redemptive endings I've ever seen. I might have shed a tear, or 2, or 10, but it's a really emotional movie, guys, but it also works as a no-holds-barred zombie movie that is truly awesome.
Silver Bullet. The last glimmering hope.
Silver Bullet from 1985. A wheelchair-bound boy suspects a werewolf is behind a string of brutal murders in his small town and teams up with his rebellious uncle to uncover the truth and fight the creature. Based on a Stephen King story, Silver Bullet is one of my top 3 werewolf movies of all time. I can't even tell you how much I love this film. Now, it's got great, cozy, small-town atmosphere that makes it just such a warm and comforting movie for me to put on anytime. I just love it. But it also doesn't shy away from the darkness that can be in a small town. And this movie doesn't hold back in showing you the terrible things that can happen. The werewolf attacks are brutal, both in what actually happens and what you see, but also in who the werewolf is killing. It's not like some vigilante werewolf. It is just slaughtering people who absolutely do not deserve this thing. It's terrible. But really, this movie is on the list because of the warmth of the relationships with the boy and his uncle and his sister. I really love the sibling stuff that's going on here. But the way this movie treats the uncle, who is played wonderfully by Gary Busey, I'd probably say this is one of Gary Busey's best performances he ever gave. Everything with him is really special. He's a broken character, but the movie treats him with so much love and empathy and doesn't go in cliche directions with him. I just really appreciate the relationship between him and Corey Haim, how it's handled, how uplifting it is. Silver Bullet makes me so happy every single time I watch it. And it also is an awesome werewolf movie. Not the greatest werewolf special effects, I will say that, but everything that's going on with the werewolf is very, very cool.
He is back from the dead. Count Dracula is alive.
Dracula Has Risen from the Grave from 1968. This is the 4th film in Hammer's Dracula series, and that's probably tied with the Halloween franchise for my favorite franchise in horror. Man, I love the Hammer Dracula films, and this one is one of my top favorites. I think Christopher Lee was never better as Dracula than he is here. He has so much commanding presence. He actually gets some dialogue in this one, and he is just growling and roaring and hissing out his lines. He's incredibly scary and intimidating, and the film was directed by famous cinematographer Freddie Francis, so he really brings a beautiful look to this movie with so much brilliant, colorful lighting, elaborate sets. But really, the film is here, and it's one of my favorite horror movies because of the characters and the romance. I really love the people in this movie. I think this film treats its characters with so much empathy, and you really care about them as they're going up against Dracula, and you don't want anybody to die. But my favorite character is definitely Paul, who's the lead and the leading lady's boyfriend. I think it's really interesting that he is an atheist, and he even has some interesting theological discussions with the main priest. And I like that this film sympathizes with non-religious people, which is not normal in classic vampire movies. I mean, Van Helsing is definitely a very religious character, but also Paul does go through a bit of a spiritual journey on this film, which is just a little bit deeper than these movies usually go. Hammer horror movies will pretty much always give you a nice, cozy, spooky feeling, at least if you're like me, and this is honestly one of my top comfort movies of all time.
This is your last chance to back out.
Seal it.
I need you to be driven.
Protecting me.
A Dark Song from 2016. A grieving mother and a damaged occultist lock themselves in a remote house to perform a months-long ritual testing the limits of body, soul, and sanity. This one is undoubtedly the scariest and the darkest movie on this list. In many ways, this is a pretty bleak film. There's an antagonistic relationship between the characters, really just two characters, this grieving mother and this man who she's hired because he has deep, dark, occult knowledge and experience and can put her through this brutal ritual in which they have to lock themselves in a house for months and just perform all of these ritualistic activities in order to pierce the veil, to break through, to contact an angel. It's a very interesting topic, but also I don't want to make you guys think that they're like going through all this torture and stuff to be able to do it. It's not a particularly graphic or gory movie. It's much more like religious practices that they're doing. But most of the interactions here are abrasive and mean, and it doesn't fit on this list until the ending. A Dark Song is about revenge, but from a totally different perspective than most movies are, and is ultimately about healing. Most horror movies about grief are from a very bleak point of view and end in darkness, but this isn't that way. I actually found the ending of this film incredibly beautiful, emotional, uplifting, and has one of the coolest indie movie special effects I've ever seen in my life. I spent the whole film thinking, okay, we're leading up to conjure an angel. There's no way it's actually going to look that cool because this is clearly a low budget movie, but I was wrong. What they pull off gobsmacked me. Like, it's incredible. A Dark Song is one of the most beautifully emotional horror films I've ever seen, while still being very scary and very atmospherically dread-fueled.
They're here. What's happening?
Poltergeist.
From 1982. A suburban family's home becomes ground zero for supernatural chaos when malevolent spirits abduct their youngest daughter through the television. I'm gonna make a bold statement. I just don't think there is any denying that Poltergeist is the top, best, wholesome horror movie ever made. It is really the ultimate family horror movie about family togetherness, family love, while being through this incredibly dark and scary haunted house experience. I love the characters in this movie. I love the parents, played by Craig T. Nelson and JoBeth Williams. And we've talked about fatherhood a lot on this list, and I do love the Craig T. Nelson stuff, but this is ultimately a mother horror movie. JoBeth Williams shines the brightest. She is so wonderful here as a mother who will do anything, who will go to the ends of hell to save her child. And that's what I ultimately find so emotionally powerful about this film. Now, for a brief history with me and Poltergeist, this is the first horror film I saw as a kid that showed me that I could have fun with and enjoy scary movies and not just be terrified of them, because for a long time I was just terrified of horror movies, which I think is one big reason I'm obsessed with them now. But I just loved Poltergeist when I saw it. It set me down a lifelong obsession with horror films. But for a long time in adulthood, I kind of left it behind. I still liked it, but I didn't rewatch it a lot. But last October, I got the chance to see it in a theater, and it emotionally devastated me, especially now that I actually am a parent. And just this story of people literally going to the ends of hell to get their child. And the sheer raw emotion of it, especially from the mother, just really got to me. This is a movie that definitely made me shed a few tears, but it is also an awesome horror movie. It goes so nuts in the third act, like PG horror films would never do again, with graves and coffins and corpses rising out of the ground. It is so awesome. This is a haunted house film that gives you so many cool visuals. If you're a monster kid, it's going to deliver all the way. It's so fun. It's so beautifully made. And it's one of the greatest horror films of all time. Before I go, I just want to send out some big appreciation for my patrons. Thank you guys so much for making this channel possible. If anyone else wants to support me, there's always a link to my Patreon in the description below. And I want to give a special shout out to the Rob Goblin, Jeff Bachman, and Lisa Goldman. You all are the absolute best. If you want to check any of these movies out, I've got streaming options right here on the screen, but of course, like all streaming options, these are subject to change. And if you want to pick up some physical media, I do have affiliate links in the description below, and using them does help support the channel. But what are some other wholesome, uplifting horror movies that you love? Let me know down in the comments below, and if you haven't yet, give a like and a subscribe. I would truly appreciate it. Thank you all so much. Don't forget to enjoy yourselves today, have some fun, and I'll see you next time. Bye.